You're good, Dr. Aiken.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, my name is Sean Aiken, and I'm the school superintendent here for Shaler area. This afternoon, we're going to walk through the presentation for the 4-day instruction. Some of you may have had the opportunity to see a very similar presentation last Wednesday night at the school board meeting. You might see a couple small slight tweaks to the presentation, but the main point for today is to give parents and families the opportunity to ask us any questions that they may have at the end. So you can see here on this slide the Q&A session. So a Q&A will occur immediately following this presentation. Again, guidelines will be shared right before the presentation for any comments or questions that parents may have. And then also, I just asked that during the presentation today that you keep your microphones muted. Thank you very much for that. So as we outlined last Wednesday night, there's some very specific goals that we have as we make this transition K to 3. So obviously our first goal is to return to 4-day per week instruction, in-person instruction for our students in grades K through 3 first, and then 4 through 6 secondly. These are our students that are most vulnerable at this time, at the youngest age, that need direct instruction and benefit from that face-to-face in-person instruction the most with our teaching staff. The second transition goal is really around balancing the needs of our students, parents, and also protecting the health and safety of all of our people in the district, the entire school community. The third piece is similar to the first one, and that's this, is that we recognize that we are going to keep safety in the forefront of every decision that we make. And as we transition, we are going to take every precaution possible to keep our students and our staff safe.
So earlier this year, we issued a survey to the parent and guardians of our students throughout the school district. We had a series of questions, and we're going to review the results of the survey. The data that you are seeing today comes from 2,692 respondents in the district that represents families K through 12. The scale that we used was 1 being not comfortable to 5 being very comfortable. The first question that we asked was, how comfortable are you with returning your child to 4-day-a-week in-person instruction while the county is still designated as being in the substantial level of transmission? Of that, roughly 22% or 569 respondents indicated that they were not comfortable. 154 or roughly 5.7% indicated a 2. 248 or 9.2% indicated a 3. And then moving into the more comfortable and very comfortable, we had 443 individual responses or 16.5% indicate that they were comfortable, followed by 46.7% or roughly 1,256 respondents that said that they were very comfortable with returning to 4-day instruction while Allegheny County was insubstantial. The next question that we asked our families was how comfortable they would be with the school district deviating from CDC recommendations, specifically regarding 6 feet of social distancing, so that we would be able to facilitate 4-day in-person instruction. You can see the results. Again, we had 2,692 respondents, 1 being not comfortable, all the way up to 5 being very comfortable. And you can see, again, roughly 38.9% of our families indicated they were very comfortable, and roughly 16.8% or 453 respondents said that they were comfortable with that return to 4-day instruction, even if 6 feet of social distancing in spaces could not be achieved by the school district. We were looking to gain additional information relative to our transportation services. So we asked parents if the district transitions to 4-day a week in-person instruction, and understanding that 6 feet of social distancing will not be possible on our school buses, would your child or children need to use district provided transportation? And you can see there about 55% of our families indicated that they would have to use the school bus when the district returns to 4-day in-person instruction. So again, this data was helpful as we look towards our planning and our modeling. And right now, as you all know, and Dr. Aiken will review in our timeline, based on these responses and the district's decision to move to 4-day instruction, we are asking families to commit. So this is not the data that we received for commitments, but rather this was the survey data that we used to help inform our decision-making process and recommendations to the school board. The final question that we asked, again, was if the district transitions to 4-day a week in-person instruction, what option at that particular time when we issued the survey would you choose for your child to be enrolled in? As you can see, roughly 75% of our families said that they would want their child to attend school 4 days per week, even if that 6 feet of social distancing could not be achieved.
So we get this question quite often, is why at this time are we transitioning to 4-day instruction? And as I mentioned on one of the previous slides, we recognize that our youngest learners require direct contact with teachers and their peers in order to engage in appropriate social interactions. The second piece is what we've seen over the past several months, is that the research showing that the spread of COVID-19 is less, significantly lower at the younger ages. So we're confident that we can do so safely. The third piece is, obviously social distancing is still a concern, but as Dr. O'Black just shared, close to 30% of our students are going to remain in remote instruction. And so that does allow for a little bit more social distancing in the classrooms, the hallways, the school buses, and the cafeteria. So, and then the final piece is just back similar to the first one, is that we recognize that our students learn best, do best, and are best served in our presence in the schools, having direct contact with their teachers, direct instruction from their teachers in person. So this is information on the 14-day trend. As you can see, we have 19 active cases. This is something that we watch on a daily basis. Currently in our schools, and Dr. O'Black will share a little bit more information about this a little bit later in the presentation. But currently in our schools, we just have a few cases that are on the dashboard, and that dashboard is actually just got reset in several of our schools. So we continue to watch this and monitor this closely. And one of the reasons that we do that is that if we hit a certain number, then we need to consider the possibility of transitioning to remote instruction. One of the reasons why this is important today too to share with the families is the fact that with the increased number of students coming into school, there is a likelihood that we could see more shutdowns just because of the number of students, the contact tracing, and the possible transmission. So hopefully we'll continue like we've seen in the Allegheny County over the past month or so, decreasing numbers, and hopefully that continues in our district as well too. But the reality is this is going to be something that we have to watch very closely as we move forward and transition into more in-person learning. So going back into the month of January, Dr. Levine released this statement, and it was actually featured in the Post-Gazette. And it really is around the risk of transmission, disease transmission, and specifically in elementary school settings. And what some of the experts are showing and finding from the data is that there's less transmission at the younger ages. And so this is one of the reasons why we're confident that as we make this transition, that not only will our staff be safe, but our students will be safe as well. So as we transition into this 4-day in-person instruction, Cohort C will continue to be a viable option for our students and families that do not feel comfortable in in-person learning. This is something that we want to continue throughout the remainder of the school year. We recognize that families may not feel comfortable even into the months of April and May and into early June. And so we will continue to provide this opportunity for our students to learn while at home, and they'll continue to maintain this relationship with their classroom teacher and their students and their peers that are in that class. So this model was really designed to allow for the quarantining and just any contact tracing and any positive cases, and just the recognition that some families would not feel comfortable sending their children into the school this year. And we plan on continuing this for the remainder of the school year. I would also note too that if you are in Cohort C and at some point in time, whether in the month of March or April or May, you start to begin to think about transitioning your child into 4-day instruction, I just ask that you contact your school principal and begin that conversation. So that's important to note as well.
One of the questions that we've received is, what are the mitigation strategies going to look like when we transition to 4-day per week instruction in our schools? The first is students and staff are going to continue to be required to adhere to the universal face masking orders as outlined by the Department of Education. Additionally, we spoke earlier about physical and social distancing. We are committed to maintaining the physical distancing of 6 feet in our school cafeterias, as that is a requirement when students remove their masks. One of the things that students will know or see when they return to 4-day-a-week instruction is we're going to be using additional spaces within the building for lunch. So they may be having lunch in a gymnasium and a cafeteria or in a library. So we are going to be using a multitude of different spaces in order to serve the increased number of students that we have within the school and maintain that 6 feet of social distancing. And then finally, our commitment is to maintain the 6 feet of physical distancing between individuals to the highest extent possible. Unfortunately, we're not able to accommodate 6 feet of social distancing in all of our classroom spaces and throughout some of our hallways. But to the point that we are able to do so and that we can continue to operate the school buildings, we certainly will continue to adhere to that when possible. Additionally, as we indicated in the survey and the commitment form, capacity on our school bus routes will need to increase as we're returning more kids to school each day. We do suspect that more families will need school district provided transportation. Students will once again share seats, and we are building our routes to have up to 2 students share a seat on a school bus, and up to 3 primary or elementary age siblings can share a seat on a school bus as well. So we understand that this is an area that families may have concerns over, but these are the parameters that we'll be working with, and based on routes and based on students returning, students opting to stay in 100% virtual, capacities on school buses are going to vary at various times throughout the spring semester.
So one of the other questions that we are asked quite frequently is, what continued cleaning measures will take place when students come to school 4 days? And really the answer is that we're going to continue doing what we've been doing. There's a tremendous amount of work that's done by our custodial staff, our maintenance staff on a daily basis, and we're going to continue that. They clean throughout the course of the day. They clean bathrooms throughout the course of the day. They touch up on classrooms throughout the course of the day. They One of the other things that we've looked at this year is the hiring of part-time custodians that come in for about 4 to 4.5 hours during the course of the school day, and they help significantly in the cafeterias, the hallways, and other areas too. And that's been very helpful for us. One of the other devices that we looked at this year and we've used that's helped significantly is the electrostatic sprayer. And this is used in the classrooms and other high touch areas around the schools. So one of the surest ways that we can mitigate the spread of the virus is really around the face coverings. And we've talked extensively about this. We as a school district we signed an attestation agreement to agree that we will mandate the universal face coverings order across the district, and we'll follow that. So that's important to note. There's only a few situations, as Dr. O'Black mentioned, where students are permitted. I know that there are some mask breaks given throughout the course of the day. Also, when students are eating or drinking and spaced at least 6 feet apart. And our teachers are pretty confident that they will continue to adhere to this. And they have reported to us, along with our principals, that the students have done a great job following this. And so we've been very pleased, especially K3. We haven't heard really any concerns at all about students not adhering to the face covering mandate. So this is a screen that a slide that we've shared, I think at every presentation that we've done this year. And so I'll just do a high level overview, but one or more symptoms in group A and two or more symptoms in group B. And I think the important thing to note with this is if you have a concern, if your child has one of these symptoms or two of the symptoms in group B, we just ask that you keep your child home for that day. And this is something that we'll continue to reinforce throughout the course of this year. It's extremely important. And I feel like for the most part, we've had success keeping our numbers relatively low because we've had cooperation from our families regarding this. But also wanted to note too that as we transition to 4-day, we recognize that we're going to have more students in the classrooms, more students on the school buses, in the hallways, the cafeteria. And we just ask that you continue to do the daily screening at home. And also, one of the other things that I wanted to mention with this too is that, you know, just like the fact that we want our families to keep their child home if they're sick, if the child's not sick, we ask that you send the child to school. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. Of course, you would send your child to school, but the reality is we want to build consistency. We've kind of given up on the hope of normalcy, but we do want to build consistency. And so if we can bring kids into school and do so safely when kids are healthy and well, it will go a long way in helping our teachers to engage with our students in the best way possible. So if you have any questions about this, and I'll touch on this in just a minute, is really contacting the school nurses, the school office, and the principals for any questions that you may have. A lot of questions, you know, as we get into April and around spring break, parents may choose to travel out of state with their families. We just ask that you communicate with your school nurse around this travel. And just continue to keep in touch with your teacher, your principal, the office staff, and the school nurse around any questions that you may have around traveling out of the state for spring break or at any time. As I mentioned earlier, we as a school district signed an attestation agreement, and you've heard this talked about on previous presentations. Again, the attestation is really about that we are attesting to the fact that we are going to follow the PDE guidelines to the greatest extent possible, that we are going to follow utilizing the mitigation efforts, and we're also going to follow the mandated universal face covering order. So that's important to note. Information can be found on the PDE website regarding the attestation agreement, and also on our website as well.
As part of the attestation agreement that Dr. Aiken mentioned, one of the parameters was that we adhere to the guidelines for positive COVID cases within our schools. And as many of you have noticed just through the emails that you've been receiving, we have had to close a few of our schools at the secondary level, elementary and secondary level, because of the positive case counts that they have within the building. When we do return to 4-day-a-week instruction, we will continue to adhere to these guidelines for the cases within our schools. And this particular matrix that we're following right now is relative to the case counts when the Allegheny County is insubstantial. So as Dr. Aiken mentioned, as we continue to increase the number of students within our building at one given time, the possibility for sporadic school closures may increase as we move through the spring semester. So you will see the Department of Education and Health have outlined a scale for large buildings, which is our high school, medium buildings, which is our middle and elementary school, and then the 3 primary schools are considered small schools. So for example, if there are between 2 to 4 students or staff in one of our primary schools that test positive within a 14-day period, the administration would recommend that that school close for a period of 3 days. That timeline can include weekends as well as in service days, et cetera. But the minimum that we would be looking to close would be 3 consecutive days. One of the important pieces to mention, as Dr. Aiken reported earlier, you will notice when you look at our dashboard that we have several active cases, but we do not have many cases within our secondary schools or in the district that fall into that 14-day period. When a school does close due to a number of positive cases, upon reopening the school, the 14-day period sets back to 0. So you will notice that with our elementary, middle school, and high school, and the same would happen at our primary schools as well. So we certainly understand it's a somewhat complex model, but when we do have to close a school because of cases, we will communicate that accordingly. You also are able to track on the dashboard potentially how close we are to closing that school as well. And obviously, as Mr. Aiken has said, or Dr. Aiken has said, at any time throughout the process, if you have questions about the guidelines for closing schools, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. As I mentioned, our COVID dashboard continues to be public. It is linked from our website. We continue to update that as cases are confirmed. A couple of notes with the dashboard that's important. We will continue to send an email as we update the dashboard. The dashboard is also only including positive cases of students who actually attend our schools. So students in Cohort C who test positive are not included within the dashboard, and students who were not in school during the infectious period will not be included in the dashboard. So for example, if a student has been on a 10 or 15-day quarantine and then they test positive during that quarantine period, if they were not in school during the infectious period, they would not be reported as a positive COVID case. So again, if you're hearing things out in the community about a particular student that has tested positive and you don't get an email, there is a reason that happens, and our nurses are very diligent about that during the contact tracing process.
Okay, and this is our final slide for this presentation today. And obviously, our parents were sent the commitment form on Friday, and we've been getting quite a few of those in. The commitment window is open from February 19th to the 24th. So that's going to close tomorrow for K-3 families. And then next week it will open for the 4 through 6. For Friday, February 22nd, the parent commitment forms are due K to 3. And then on March 8th, we'll make that 4-day instruction transition for grades K through 3. As mentioned last Wednesday night, we're looking at March 15th for grades 4 through 6, and that we're still working on grades 7 through 12, pending the Allegheny County district positivity rates. Dr. Black, do you want to review the Q&A session
Certainly.
protocol?
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Aiken. So what we're going to ask is, if you have the ability, if you could please raise your hand in the reaction tool at the bottom of your screen. And when recognized, if you could unmute yourself and state your name. If you do not have the ability to raise your hand, I will allow an opportunity at the end for anybody to ask questions, and they can certainly speak at that time. As a reminder, as we've done throughout all of our town hall meetings, if your question is personal in nature to your child, that question should be directed to your building principal or the appropriate department. So at this point, if any of the parents or guardians that are joining us, if you have any specific questions, please raise your hand in the reaction tool. Gina, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, I know you said that COVID dashboard is complex, and I completely agree and understand, and you guys are doing an awesome job with that. I just have a question in regards to Scott Primary. The email that was sent out said that the students had not been in the building since the 1st, and we're like going on over 20 days of that. So I just didn't understand why the dashboard still reflected that it's active if I thought it was a 14-day period.
So the 14-day period is from the date in which we're informed of the positive COVID case. So it goes on notification.
Okay, so even though those students haven't been in the building and the building has not, like, they've gone through the COVID detox or whatever we're calling it, it's from notification. It's not from the actual date of when they were last, like, would have had contact with other children.
That is correct. And the main reason for that is we don't want to be going back and backdating quarantines and or isolation periods. Once the district finds out about the case, we have found that is the most accurate indication. There is a lag time from the Allegheny County Department of Health,
right,
on where individuals are getting their testing results. Those have been delayed as well. So when we started this process, the date that was the most available to us was the date in which we were informed of the case.
Right. Okay. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Our next question is from Emily.
Hi, thank you. My question relates to Scott Primary. Is there going to be some updated guidance with the increase in traffic as far as school pickup is concerned?
So we're actually working with Ms. Fote and the team that actually does arrival and dismissal there. And we're also working with our SROs to make sure that there's some guidance there, especially during the first week as we transition, and we're going to be watching the situation closely. As far as updated guidance, I think there are some different protocols. Dr. O'Black and I were actually having a conversation with Ms. Fote this morning, and there's a few different pieces of information that's going to change a little bit as far as the steps and how they bring the cars into the parking lot. So that information is going to be shared here very soon. We recognize that is going to be a challenge at some of these primary schools with just the number of cars. But we also are seeing that there's a number of families that have chosen to opt into the school bus as well. So while we expected some more students maybe riding the school bus with this transition, we also understand that there's just going to be a lot of car riders as well too, and it's going to create quite a logjam there on Scott Avenue and over at Marzoff and Birchfield and potentially at Reserve as well.
Our next question is from Michelle Taylor.
Hello. So I had a question about, so if we say a parent fills out the commitment form, whether they pick virtual or 4 days, is there the ability for a parent to change their mind and toggle back to the other option? Like if cases start going up or things aren't working at home, fully virtual, like what is that an option? And do we work with our principal if that's the case?
Yeah, I would really just encourage you to keep in close contact with your principal. We understand that some parents may not feel 100% comfortable with this, and if they see an increased case count at one of the schools or hear some concerns, I just ask that you share those concerns with the school principal. We are hoping to create a little bit more consistency with this 4-day and the hybrid, or excuse me, the remote option. But we also recognize that this is a very difficult time for a lot of families and for all of us. And so we understand if there is going to be a change. While we do want that consistency, we recognize that some families may, need to make a transition if necessary. And we just ask that you keep in close contact with your principal. School counselors would be great for those conversations too.
Okay. I have one other question on if a classroom in the primary schools, that class happens to have a lot of children, the full class is coming back. Like what is going to be done within the classroom to separate? Because right now we have a half or less in these classrooms. So like what will be done? I know that children will not move to different teachers as stated in emails, but how, what will be done in each classroom?
Yeah, so we're going to socially distance to the greatest extent possible in each one of our classrooms, understanding that it's impossible to do that to 6 feet. Obviously, when students are on mask and they're eating, we will follow the attestation agreement and mandate that the 6 feet be followed. But in the classroom, we'll do it to the greatest extent possible. One of the things that we've been encouraging our teachers to use is the desk shields, and then also just maintaining the masking. And we feel strongly that those two mitigation strategies will help. But it's also important that we just continue to look at our classrooms and identify the best possible way that we can distance to the greatest extent possible.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question is from George. George, are you still with us?
Hi, this is Lisa, George's wife. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Sorry about that. So I have kind of just a follow-up question, piggybacking off of the last question. So it sounds like, have you guys considered alternative options like the plexiglass in the rooms, or even just like as the weather gets warmer, opening windows for those more crowded classrooms?
Yeah, and still one of the greatest options that we have, especially as we continue to hopefully get some warmer weather, will be the windows being open. That will improve the ventilation in the classrooms. But the desk shields should provide that level of safety. And so we're working with our teaching staff to make sure that they're solidified so that they can be utilized. I know at some of our schools, they're utilized every day, every period. So we want to make that more consistent across the board, especially as we transition into the 4-day. And we are confident that they will serve that purpose well.
Okay, great. And then one other question regarding the transportation. I'll need to shift from dropping off to using the school bus. Will there be additional information like sent out around like bus number and timing and all that?
Yes, Dr. Black, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we are reviewing all of the parent commitment forms and we'll be modifying students that are rostered to buses. So we're not anticipating significant changes bus numbers and things of that nature. It's going to be a little bit more around pickup and drop off times are going to modify a little bit differently, but parents will receive their busing information if they were in cohort C, moving to 4-day a week. Their information will be in Infinite Campus the week prior to 4-day beginning.
Okay, and that goes for, like, I'm in cohort A, but was doing the drop off and pickup.
Yeah, as long as on
yeah.
your parent commitment form, as long
Yep.
as you select that you will need transportation, your child or children will be rostered to a school bus.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next question is from Jackie Heckman. The next question is from Julie.
Hi, my question is, if, say, every person in my child's class chooses to be in person, so there are no cohort C kiddos in that sense, will there be a time that I would need to contact either the principal or the teacher to let them know that my child will be working from home that day if they weren't feeling well, or how will that work? Will the teacher be online every day?
This was actually a question that we were actually talking through this morning. So that we know of right now, and there may be more as we get these commitment forms in, we'll be able to know to a greater extent. But in a situation where every child in the class is actually in cohort A or cohort B and transitions to 4-person or 4-day instruction, then the teacher will be just doing direct instruction with those students. But we also recognize that there could be quarantines, there could be positive cases, there could be contact traces that results in those things. So we need to be able to pivot in those situations and meet the needs of those students that go home. Now, if it's just an occasional sick day that maybe your child just comes down with a common cold or something like that, and it's just going to be one day out of school, we just ask that your child just recover and be at home and be sick that day, just as they would in normal times. But if it is going to be an elongated, where they're going to miss several days, we ask that you communicate that with the school principal, the teacher, and potentially the principal, and just communicate what the needs are, and then that teacher will pivot and transition to make that cohort C available in that classroom.
Great, thanks. I'm glad that you have been thinking about that, because that's of a concern I know of some people. So thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is from the name is L.
Hi, my name is Lauren McCain. I actually have a question and a general comment. My question is, have you considered acquiring portable air filtration systems for those spaces in which you're unable to accommodate social distancing?
We actually did, and we actually looked at the air purifiers and then also a couple other options. And what we found is the best option, we believe. We have an energy conservation program going on, actually a capital improvement plan in the district right now. And so we've partnered with an organization called 10, and 10 has been doing a lot of improvements and upgrades to our boilers and HVAC systems across the district. And so while researching this and actually talking with our architect, and then also with the group 10, we came to realize that the air purifying systems would be a good short-term fix, but the actual work on the HVAC systems in each classroom in the schools that are necessary would actually be a good, positive, long-term fix. So we've opted to go towards the long-term fix. And so we're in the process of meeting with 10 and working with our school board on this, and those upgrades are going to be made.
Do you have any idea projected date for that? I was just wondering about in the short term with them returning to potential 4-day in-person instruction.
Yeah, we don't have an exact date. I know that we want to expedite this process, though. I do know that, and I know the focus is around Birchfield, Marzoff, and Reserve first, and then we'll move to the elementary school after those 3 schools are done. But as I mentioned earlier, in talking with our architect and also the energy conservation team, still one of the best strategies, if not the best strategy, is actually just to open the window, and that will actually help significantly as well.
You also had mentioned that there are just certain spaces that the physical distancing can't be accommodated in. Will there be a list of those spaces that are released by building to parents prior to the commitment forms being returned? Or will you not know until the commitment forms are returned?
Well, I think I can just be clear now. We recognize that in the classrooms, it's going to be very difficult to do 6 feet. Our classrooms are nice size in Scott and Birchfield, a little bit smaller in Marzoff and Reserve. But if you put 20 students in that classroom, or 18 students in the classroom, or 23 students in the classroom, it's going to be physically impossible to maintain 6 feet, at least 6 feet all the time. The school buses is another area of concern, and then the hallways. But I'll tell you, our teachers at the K3 level and the 4-6 level have done a great job in kind of mitigating some of the hallway concerns. And they've actually been walking students to and from all their specials and lunch and everywhere that they go. So that actually helps with the hallway space. So really, it really, at the K3 level, it comes down to 2 areas: the classrooms and the school buses. In the cafeteria, our students will be 6 feet apart at all times. We will have overflow seating in different spaces around the schools to ensure that our students can eat safely while they take their masks off. So that's important to note as well.
Okay, and then lastly, I did look at the list that you showed in the presentation about the screening symptoms, but in regard to the comment that was made about the common cold, I am a healthcare provider, and frequently people who are testing positive with COVID just have symptoms of the common cold.
Yeah.
And not fever or necessarily significant cough.
Yeah.
So with this increase in just strictly volume of students, or do you think that you'll start to also encourage routine testing for symptoms that parents might otherwise attribute to allergies or just a common cold in order to prevent increased rates of transmission, especially with the more transmissible variants of COVID that are starting to surface throughout the country?
Yeah, and that was probably a bad example to say a common cold, because right now, sore throats, common colds, stuff like that, achy bodies, those are the most common symptoms that we hear about kind of the first stages of the onset of COVID. So there has been some discussion around the, and as people know, President Biden was talking about more kind of wide scale testing that would take place. I have not seen that put into place yet in Western Pennsylvania, but I know there's some discussion around that. I think, once again, I think utilizing the school nurse as a tremendous resource, that if you have a question as a parent and you're, kind of like uncertain, my child doesn't really think that he has COVID, and I don't think he's been exposed to anybody, but we have concerns about these symptoms. And so I think if you come across those symptoms and you're unsure of something, if you would reach out to the school nurse, I think that would be a tremendous starting point. And I know we have several parents on the call, and we've heard from quite a few people that work in the healthcare industry too. So I know people have expertise and experience and knowledge themselves as well.
Sure. Just thank you for answering my questions. My just last general statement as a follow-up to that statement is essentially at this point, if you leave your house, you're potentially exposed to COVID, as I'm sure everyone
Yes.
is aware. And I can't tell you the number of people who I've seen that are testing positive that come in and say, oh, I think this is just allergies. I don't think I have COVID, but I have to get tested for school or for work.
Yeah, we recognize even just asymptomatic, we've heard multiple cases of students and even our own children that have had COVID that possibly that had no symptoms yet, tested positive. So
Our next question is from Sean Connolly.
Good evening. My kid attends first grade at Reserve, and I was wondering, with going to the 4-day a week, I saw that it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So right now, he goes to work with me for a proctoring program Thursdays and Fridays. And so he would be going with me on Wednesdays. But I noticed that he does not have class all day on Wednesdays. He has one class in the morning that lasts about an hour and a half sometimes. And then the rest of the day is pretty much just a free day, work on, stuff that he already pretty much has done. So, it's just a concern to me that, with, only having 4-day a week, even right now, losing on that day on Wednesdays, to not having any classes besides the morning meeting, just seems like a waste of time. And for me to, send him to a proctoring program at CMU and pay for him to sit there all day and not have anything to do would be kind of crazy. So I was wondering if once they go to this 4-day program, are they going to resume classes back up on Wednesday, or is it still going to be pretty much just a free day?
Yeah, we certainly don't want it to be viewed as a free day. We want it to be an instructional day, and there may be some direct instruction that they have on that day, but there may also be some asynchronous instruction that they have on that day too. And hopefully there's also the use of some small group tutorial and other work that's done on that day too that can help students that may be lagging a little bit behind or need some remediation. So I wouldn't look at it as a free day, and I think it's a constantly evolving process where our teachers are working to meet the needs of students that are in Cohort C, and then also challenging the students in Cohort A and B. I do believe that as we transition to 4-day, that you may see some more structure around that day. I think it's important to note that there are a lot of different things that occur on those days that it's just not, a free day for staff or a free day for students too. So hopefully that will continue to evolve and you'll see some structure around those days that will help with some of the concerns that you've shared with us.
Thank you.
Dr. Aiken, those are all the questions this evening.
Well, I'd just like to take a moment and thank everybody that joined the call. It looks like we have a nice sized group today. I know this is a very challenging situation for all of us, parents, teachers, students, administration, and we're working together. And please don't hesitate, as Dr. O'Black mentioned earlier, you may have a question that comes up after we jump off. If you could, reach out to your school principal, counselor, teacher, Dr. O'Black, myself, and we'll do our very best to meet you and the needs of your family, and just understand that this is a challenge that's gone on for over 11 months now. We're coming up on a year, and we're going to continue to work together and move forward as a school district so that our students get what they need and continue to progress in their education. So thank you very much. I hope you all have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing your children coming back to us in person even more often coming here soon. Thank you.